All right, we're starting. Here's the bit. I don't often get to toast the dawn of a new era, but when I do, I drink Dos Equis.
Oh, wow.
Eh?
You had to prep this bit.
Yeah, I did. I went and I got a can while it was raining, and I couldn't mow half an hour ago, or 2 hours ago.
A bit you committed to so much.
That I bought a can of Dos Equis.
That's great.
Yeah, I got hit by the rain out in the open. It's pretty good. The cars were driving around laughing at me.
Mm-hmm. But you'll have the last laugh.
Yes. Yeah, I was laughing, looking at all those cars burning up all those fossil fuels.
It's like, sorry, I'll probably get canceled for being a Weezer fan.
Uh-oh.
But it is their first album, and everyone likes their first album. There's a song called Surf Wax America, and part of the chorus is, "You take your car to work, I'll take my board, and when you're out of fuel, I'm still afloat." Pretty cheesy, but...
Yeah. Another thing I saw today while going to get the lawnmower to mow my field was the spectacle of a lone woman on the sidewalk holding a Trump won 2020 sign all by herself to go stand at the corner of 176th and Meridian and wave it around.
I like those folks though.
You gotta hand
the loan. When we were,
it's hard to do something by yourself, man.
When we were on our little trip down to Northern California, I saw someone at an intersection in Oregon somewhere, and he just was sitting in a chair, and he had a sign that was just like "honk for peace" or something.
Nice.
Something very, big and abstract like that.
Right.
But he was, it's
peace?
like I've noticed him when I went by, just like this is how he's choosing to spend his time. In the same way that this lady is like, I'm just going to go down to the corner by myself.
It's by myself. Yeah, relatively hot day, Saturday afternoon. It's 1 p.m. What else could you be doing? She's not looking at her phone. She's living in the moment.
And if you really do feel like you are engaged or want to be engaged, like what else can you do to feel like you're doing something? She doesn't have any other options available to her.
Yeah, that's true. The
if
public
she feels
space,
like something needs to be done,
The public space is on the side of a road in the United States. That's where the public space is, than the internet, I suppose. But it's really striking, speaking of a new human era, the sheer irrelevance of it all.
Oh, right. I forgot. We got sidetracked because we were cheersing the dawn of a new era.
Yeah. Toasting. There is now a functioning research-sized molten salt reactor that is about to start operating. Actually, it's starting operating now, and they're gonna start testing in September.
I wish they had a live feed like they do on the Eagle Cubs.
Yeah. It would, I mean...
you could just check into that, 24/7, and it would just please your little heart so much.
It would certainly please mine, being a molten salt reactor fanatic, nerd. But...
Stan.
Yeah, I would, they're playing it pretty close to the chest, pretty close to the vest. I mean, you don't want to... They are announcing it, but it makes you wonder, how much is going on in the background. By the time something makes it to the news. Speaking from personal experience with working on a project with a bureaucracy with the city of Tacoma, there's a lot going on, and all
before the flyers get printed out.
Yeah, by the time you're making public,
or the mailers.
Yeah, you don't want to expose yourself to the chance of a mistake or having to backtrack or lose face.
Right.
Or, God forbid, lose public money and make somebody mad before you have it sealed.
Or an unfulfilled promise or anything like that.
Yeah. So, the government of China in 2011 started a well-funded, like hundreds of millions of dollars, research and development program into molten salt reactors. And 10 years later, which is today, they have built a 2 megawatt research molten salt reactor. It's there. It exists. That means there's people who built it. That means that there's how many hundreds of expert minds are swirling around this,
right.
engineers and chemists.
It's not necessarily production infrastructure, but there is infrastructure, the designing, the engineering, the thinking, the brain work infrastructure.
The bureaucratic infrastructure.
Right. Is all built.
It's there.
Not that they could start producing them at a mass scale. That infrastructure isn't necessarily there.
No,
but
it's not there yet. But this is just this is a world-shaking event. This is an absolute bombshell. Not.
That's funny. I didn't see it on the. Oh well, I don't watch the news. So,
right. Right. This is a complete paradigm shift. This is the beginning of a complete paradigm shift away from fossil fuels. We've talked about the molten salt reactor before, starting with with supernovas and neutron star collisions. Where do radioactive materials come from? What does it mean? And now, in the world's most populous country, in the country with the most powerful government that human beings have ever put together, and in a country that is already the beating industrial heart of the world economy, they now have begun the transition to a full nuclear economy. The neutron economy is the lingo.
Mm-hmm. And like I said last time we spoke off mic, potentially a decent band name.
Yeah. Yeah.
The neutron economy.
Yeah. And I would say
Pat, copyright, you can't steal that band name.
Right. I mean, it is as if it was the year 1830 and you were in France and Napoleon is dead now, but the scars of what he did, and, there's still tens of thousands of Napoleonic War veterans all over Europe, and what he tried to do, trying to unify Europe and just completely shaking the old order. And it's like, oh, well, yeah, that's how things are, right? How Napoleon was kind of the apotheosis of that era, of a pre-industrial Europe. He took European institutions and the military know-how and what you could do with a military in a pre-industrial economy. It's extraordinary. And you'd say, well, yes, but in Britain, they're starting to burn coal instead of turning their forests into charcoal. And they're using these steam engines to pump water out of their mines and stuff. And you're like, well, what? So what?
Who cares?
Who cares about that? And you go, well, actually, it's going to be this thing that completely transforms your economic system from top to bottom. You will no longer have medieval style guilds where people are making shoes in their own houses and whatnot. And you will no longer have to rely on water wheels to grind your grain, and it will start this process of economic transformation that will make the next 100 years completely dominated by that transformation. So a kid born today in 1830 in France is going to die when they're 100 years old, and it's 1930 in France.
Right. It's a new world.
It's a new world.
A different world than the one they were born into, basically.
Yes. And it's happening right now in the year 2021. Well, that's it. The end.
The end. maybe it's, I don't know how interesting it is, but you're saying, okay, it says the dawning of
A new era.
a new era.
Yes.
This isn't the first, and we may have covered some of this already, but this isn't the first molten salt reactor ever
No, it
built.
isn't. No, it is not.
But it's not the fourth one.
That's about right.
It's maybe the third one.
It's the third. You had.
Well, it's not the fifth one.
No, it is not the fifth.
Third or fourth molten salt reactor ever built.
Okay, so I might be making mistakes when I say this, but the two this is actual molten salt reactors that actually were built by human beings and actually ran. You had the aircraft reactor experiment in the 1950s.
Is that the Fireball one?
That's the Fireball in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And then literally in the same building, they were done with the aircraft reactor experiment, which achieved the highest temperature of about 1,650 degrees Fahrenheit, like 850 degrees Celsius. This is a very hot thing.
And not that it's all that important, but
Right.
it is just sort of funny as an aside, their motivation to build this machine.
Okay. They built it because the ICBM had not been invented yet, and they wanted a Doctor Strange-Lovian type doomsday machine.
To
An
fly
aircraft
around the planet.
An aircraft that would not need to be refueled.
Right.
So, okay.
Carrying
a bomb.
Nuclear bombs.
Nuclear bombs just in case Russia invaded or like a nuclear war started, and you could use this as your last ditch, like spiteful act, I suppose.
Right. So that was the thrust behind the Fireball.
Yeah. And at that point, the Cold War was really, the hysteria was getting bad and the government had a lot of money. And the bureaucratic ossification and inertia hadn't set in yet. So Glenn Seaborg and Alvin Weinberg and Rickover, they're all around and they're all still relatively young men. And World War II is very fresh in their memory. And there's a lot of money and there's a lot of different programs and there's a whole lot of brain power. And everything's still in its infancy. Like, okay, you have a molten salt reactor experiment. Cool. How old is atomic energy at all? Less than 20 years old. If it's 1934,
it's actually pretty exciting. Like,
it's an exciting time.
Mad scientists can think up ideas and then actually have some bureaucratic support behind exploring them, basically. In a way. Yeah.
Because they're still writing the rules. The rule book is being written. And so there's a lot of degrees of freedom when the world is like that, when everything you're involved in, and you have all the experts involved in it who it's like, there are
fewer sort of institutional structures or pressures saying you can't do that.
Yeah. It's almost not there.
It's illegal, or it's too expensive,
and very importantly, a lot of these guys are not bureaucrats; they are scientists. It's like the guy who helped invent and describe plutonium to produce. He helped make plutonium. You have to manufacture plutonium. He's still around, and he's in a position of power. So. He wasn't a guy who came up through the bureaucracy. He is a nuclear
or a bureaucrat.
Yeah,
right.
He is a nuclear physicist who knows this stuff inside and out.
That ended up
in charge of the bureaucracy
of blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Director of this and that.
Alvin Weinberg, I think, was the director of Oak Ridge National Labs. I don't know his exact title. It really doesn't matter because you get that list of names. You're looking at it. You're like, oh my God, Glenn's. These are guys who, when they were in school, there is no atomic age. Think of it this way. The global war on terror, we're about to reach the 20th anniversary of September 11th attacks, right? That's 20 years ago. What's the distance in time between 1934 and 1954? Same distance in time. 1934, there's no uranium. There's no bomb.
Machine guns are only 20 years old.
Yeah. Tank warfare is just about to show how worthwhile it is on land. 1954, 2 bombs have been dropped. Nuclear weapons are really getting well underway, developed. And it's only been 20 years. 20 years. That's it. 20 years doesn't seem that long now. I feel old, you know.
Right.
So it's 1954, and they run a aircraft reactor experiment, and they go, "Hey, this is pretty damn cool."
It got real hot.
It got incredible. That's very hot. I mean, yeah, that's like, oh shit, you know, like our component's gonna start failing, which they knew it wouldn't. You know, like steel melts in like 2000, so or more, 2500. Very hot, much hotter. But you know that's hot enough to be like, okay, this isn't something you can just be around. You have to have special materials. You got to have a lot of insulation around it. So they ran that because somebody wanted a nuclear airplane, and then they said, well, this would maybe have to be the engine that powers something like that. Then the intercontinental ballistic missile gets developed, and you don't need a nuclear airplane. And it's a bad idea anyway, because even if your engine is very good, some other aspect of the plane might fail, and now you have a nuclear reactor
plummeting through space. Plummeting through the
atmosphere from 20,000 feet. Ooh, what could possibly go wrong? But the aircraft reactor experiment proved a lot. It was a very fertile experiment for looking at neutronics, heat exchange, components, metals, chemistry, all of that. All that fertile ground fertilized the next experiment, literally in the same building, because they took the aircraft reactor experiment out. And then at Oak Ridge, they built the molten salt reactor experiment, which was built in order to say, let's look at this not as an airplane engine, let's look at it as a civilian electricity source, how that would work. And that one was designed, built, and run from basically 1965 to 1969. And then after that, no more actual functional molten salt reactors that I know of were ever built or run on the planet Earth. So I think this one in China is actually number 3. I think it is. I could be wrong. I can't think of any others. The Russians never built one. And the Russians built a lot of other solid-fueled nuclear reactors. They built a fast-spectrum solid-fueled nuclear reactor, and one of them is running right now. And they're going to build another one. The BN600, the BN800, and now they're going to build a BN1200. 1,200 megawatts. You know, it's a lot of energy. It's pretty cool. So they have more experience with they have the most experience in the world with fast spectrum solid fuel. But molten salt is this threshold you cross. When you get to molten salt, you can, because the fuel is dissolved, you can you can fission every atom in a given mass of plutonium or uranium or thorium. And that is kind of the threshold. You cross that and you're looking at fuel lifetimes that are extraordinarily long. They're not joking when they say you could, if you had in your hand a sphere of plutonium or thorium or uranium about the size of a billiard ball, that's the amount of energy in there, because every one of those atoms would be split, would be all that you use in your lifetime. It's actually smaller. It's more like a golf ball.
All that you'd use in your lifetime to power what?
All the electricity, all the cooking heat, all your transportation heat, all your airplane fuel.
For your city or your state or your
for
nation?
You as an individual.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
I see.
So,
gotcha.
Every human on this planet with a European or Western standard of living gets one sphere of plutonium that they get.
Gotcha.
The day you're born. You get a birth certificate and a golf ball of plutonium. Here's all your energy. Because the energy involved in a fission reaction. You split an atom. It doesn't release 150,000 more times of energy than a carbon-hydrogen bond, a fossil fuel bond. Not 780,000 times more, a million. There's a million times more energy in that reaction. It is a million times more energy dense than fossil fuels, than chemical energy. You're breaking apart the heart of an atom, not the electron shell.
Right.
You exchange energy in an electron shell, you're burning wood, you're swapping, oxygen out for hydrogen, and you're releasing a lot of nice energy. Don't we all love campfires? You go into the nucleus, it is a million times more energy dense. You get a million times more bang for your buck. If you have $1 and I have $1 million, there's a big difference in what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
That is why it is
transformational.
It is more transformational than the Industrial Revolution, because when the modern industrial evolution started in Britain, they didn't know all the consequences of what they were doing. It was a non-industrial society becoming industrial. So they didn't have a plan. You didn't have.
Well, again, it's one of these times where you're sort of making it up as you go.
Yeah.
Writing the rules.
Yeah. It started out as a way to mine more coal, or like as a way to or like tin in Cornwall, like a way to, well, fuck, these mines are so deep now that they go below the water table, and we can't hook up water wheels to run these pumps, and so we'll use these, single stroke steam engines. They were incredibly inefficient at the time, They didn't have nearly as good research and development. And then it spiraled, and it just kept spiraling and spiraling. And then it's like, oh, well, we could use this type of engine to make we could power an engine to move horizontally and not just run a pump, because if you have that stroke and like, oh, okay. And then railroads start happening. The fact that it's happening now, we know now what industrialization means. We have 200 years of that history to draw upon. And we have a sense of the good it can do and the harm it can do. And now all of a sudden, people are starting to use an energy source 1 million times more energy dense. A lump of coal that you hold in the palm of your hand, the size of an orange or an apple, you throw that in the furnace and it disappears and there's no effect. You throw that in a molten salt reactor and it powers a city for a day, an entire city of 400,000 people for a day. All of it. It's extraordinary, and it's beginning to happen.
Well, let me serve you up a softball. Well, that's all well and good so long as it's just as easy to find an orange-sized lump of plutonium as it is to find an orange-sized lump of coal. Or it would need to be, I guess anything less than 1 million times rarer, you're still winning.
Right?
Anything less than 1 million times rarer. That might make sense.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
So, you know, I've seen coal. I can buy it at the store, but I don't run across plutonium or thorium all that often.
One would hope.
So is there enough?
Yeah, there's enough.
And I know we've said this.
Yeah.
We've said it before.
Yeah. It is a softball.
But it's a fair question when you're saying, an orange can power us, orange-sized stuff, lump of this stuff can power a city. But, like if we're trying to power our civilization on gold, we'd run out real quick because there's not all that much gold.
Correct. Okay, well, the regular uranium in the ground, or 99% of it is uranium-238, which you cannot use to make a bomb. It is not fissionable. It's fertile, which we've covered. a little bit less, 1% of it roughly is uranium-235, which is the stuff you can make bombs out of or use as the kindling to start a molten salt reactor. Or the tinder, you might say. If you look at the abundance of uranium-235, it's about as rare as gold or like platinum in the ground. It truly. Just the U-235, not natural uranium, just that 1%. Because, only 1% of something, even if it's very relatively abundant. So you say, okay, well, who would... Are you telling me that people would run their nuclear reactors on something as rare as gold or silver in the ground? Yep.
And that's what they're doing.
That's what we're doing now.
So that Olympic-sized swimming pool is getting smaller and smaller as we go.
Yeah. So, it's kind of, it is the single most infuriating aspect of the current state of things, which is going away thanks to China, thanks to the molten salt reactor. The paradigm is shifting. It's going to be over soon. Is that the current fleet of solid fueled nuclear reactors, which don't emit carbon dioxide with, the actual heat generation. You emit carbon dioxide to build the thing. But after that, it doesn't. So what, 18% currently of the U.S. electricity generation, the base load, just the electricity, is like nuclear. Something like that. In France, it's more like 82%. It's a lot higher, and they have the cheapest electricity in Europe because of that. Those reactors run, the vast majority of them in the whole world run on uranium-235.
The rare stuff.
Really rare stuff.
As rare as gold.
About as rare as gold. It's a little less rare than gold, I believe. A geologist could give you the answer. It's just Wikipedia it if you really want to. But you have to realize how much fucking work it takes to enrich uranium. It takes cities worth, literally, not metaphorically. It takes cities worth of electricity to enrich uranium to an enrichment that you can stick into a reactor and, make U-235 go from 0.75% to like 35%. And then at 35%, it's critical enough. You have enough there that when it does fission, enough neutrons can hit another one and keep the reaction going and keep it critical.
Including the stuff that's not 235?
Interestingly enough, all reactors are a little bit of breeder reactors. So like a third of the actual heat energy coming out comes from breeding.
That stuff that's not
directly fissionable.
Gotcha.
It sucks up a neutron.
I think
to breed up.
That before.
Yeah, we talked about breeding. Sucks up a neutron, turns into plutonium, and then fissions at the next neutron. And when it fissions, it releases the same amount of energy as U-235.
Okay.
The amount of energy it releases is the same once it actually splits. Not actually the exact same,
right.
but
in the same order of
magnitude. Yeah.
Same number of zeros.
You split a nucleus, you're going to get an immense amount of energy. If it's after iron. Remember that one?
Yeah, I did. That was the lesson one. Basically.
So what's infuriating about the current status quo state of things is we already run reactors that are profoundly less efficient and profoundly more complicated and less inherently safe than the molten salt system. We are already doing things much more difficult.
Right.
So it's like taking a physicist and putting him back in 8th grade math. Like, if you can run a light water reactor or a boiling water reactor, if you're an operator or the maintenance or all of that, or like the technicians in charge of it, or the people doing really crunching the numbers, you can do molten salt.
But spend more time on your crossword because it's actually easier.
Yes, it is so much easier to the best of my understanding. Everybody's like, yeah. It's like aircraft carrier to a floating log. Like there were
floating log sounds kind of tricky to nav, but anyway, to pilot.
Right, we can do this. Not only have we done this, but
twice.
twice.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Although really only once in the application of actual, power for consumers or, humans.
But I mean, that aircraft reactor experiment is fascinating. Like 46 gallons circled through the reactor a minute. That's not very much. It's not a huge machine. It would fit in my living room. This kind of solid tank, and it's like just pumping through. Okay, and it goes through and it's critical, and you're reaching 1,600 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're an industrialist, if you're a guy who makes steel, if you're a guy who makes rebar or cement or paint or runs a paper mill, you're going, wait,
what?
Wait, how hot did you get that? Oh my God, how
Yes,
long would
please.
you have that? Yeah. How much fuel do you have to add a day? Less than a kilogram? What? Can I sign up, please?
Can I have one?
If you're running a ceramic kiln to make plates and cups and coffee mugs, we can do it.
Speaking of ceramics, though, and this is something I haven't heard you talk about, but something I saw mentioned in that Global Construction article. I think was that one of the innovations that made, whoever's writing this article, I don't know, but one of the innovations that made this possible, this first of its kind, but actually sort of third in human history ever built, was the material development of, whatever the basin is.
Oh, sure.
Whatever the pot is made of, so, they had this proprietary this or that.
Is it a ceramic?
Ceramic, I think, based.
Wow. That makes sense.
Because, it's a problem I never heard you mention. Might be a problem is, things get real hot.
Yeah.
You need something that can withstand that sort of heat.
It is China. They do have the fine China. I know it sounds. Hey, not to be too.
Yeah, they
cute.
should. Yeah, they know their way around a ceramic.
Yeah, one would hope. I mean,
is that a problem either of the first two had, or
they were all metal?
One of the reasons that it hasn't happened since 69.
No. See, here's the thing. And this gets to the heart of the matter.
Only because I saw it mentioned in the article.
I haven't read that
I'd
article.
never thought about.
Ceramics probably would be a really good.
It almost seemed like they were implying that they needed to do some good material development to get the thing to hold the molten salt.
But
I'd have to look at the article again.
Right.
But
there's whenever you get. It's like, hey, let's make something incredibly hot, possibly corrosive, like a salt, ionic. It's got you've got a ton of electric charge, and it's radioactive. Okay, that's a lot. That's a big intersection. That's a big.
I can't think of any other ways it could be dangerous except if it were sharp.
No. Here's the one: high pressure.
Oh, sure.
Which it isn't. Yeah. It runs at atmospheric.
It could literally I called it a basin in my notes because in my head it could literally just be an open pool, right?
Yes. A pump, a pipe, and a pot.
That's going to be Neutron Economy's first song or EP. A pump, a pipe, and a pot.
Here's how extraordinary it could be. Like you could open it up to the atmosphere and it would not lose its fundamental functionality.
Right.
Like here's the pot, like a jacuzzi, like a hot tub, and the pipe goes out about through the top and it runs through a pump and then pumps in through the bottom, and you could open the lid and it would still be critical. There would be this, it would probably make its own weather. It's so hot, just you'd see the heat shimmer coming off of it, but you would see, and I think you would see effervescent bubbles of radioactive gas coming out, xenon and stuff.
But you said, how hot? 1,600?
Yeah.
That's not even all that hot.
No, correct.
Right? That's only...
In solar terms, yeah. In universe terms, yeah.
Well, it's only not like twice as hot as what lead melts at.
Yeah. It's not
Right.
hideously hot.
That's
You're
sad.
not going to bore a hole to the center of the world. No.
Right.
It's that we do things hotter than that all the time industrially. We make steel, bro.
Right. So this implication that we needed to invent a holding
No.
material.
Yeah, exactly.
I either misread it or.
Well, you would need. You have a tank at atmospheric or just not much farther above that needs to hold something that's very radioactive. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that these things, you stick your hand in it.
It's not a teddy bear.
Yeah, but like, that's the point. What also isn't a teddy bear? A hydroelectric dam. You want to kill a river? Cut its throat? So they're not innocuous. They are awesome,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a molten salt at 1600 degrees. So it's going to vaporize flesh if you get out there. And it's releasing neutrons and radiation, probably gamma radiation. Yeah, it would be. But it's nothing like, you think of a light water reactor, which has to use water at 300 degrees Celsius. Well, how do you keep it liquid? You put it under intense pressure. So if there's the slightest issue, it flashes to steam. This is why those nuclear reactors are enormous. It's not the size of the core, it's the containment for steam.
Oh my gosh, of course.
That's your issue? That's the corner you painted yourself into? Well, we have to have water.
To over-engineer this thing just to deal with the expansive pressure.
Yeah, of fucking water.
Of water.
What? Why not just say don't use water? Like, here's an idea. Go around the problem. We over-engineered our way through the problem. God damn it! Fuck. I think at least a few years ago, there was only one Japanese company in the world that could do the forgings for the lids on light water reactors because it has one application, but you can't have a single flaw in it. And so it's like poured or forged, so it's not forged. I don't know. But you can't weld a lid like that that has to withstand that much pressure. And so the backlog on that is like 20 goddamn years, because it's like, oh yeah, you can't just pick these up off the shelf. Each one has to be custom made for every light water reactor that gets made, right? Okay, so what's your backlog? 20 years. Well, when's that? 2041. By 2041, China might be churning out one of these molten salt reactors a day.
They might lose some of their orders by that point.
Yeah, I can get you some stocks to short. And that's what it means to be a paradigm shift. The fossil fuel age is going away. The fossil fuel age is over. This is the little rock at the top of the hill that unlodges the boulder. And then there's this massive landslide, and it's like, oh, dude, where's my... Fossil fuels are going to become chemical feedstock, not an energy source. Why would I use an energy source that's 1,000,000 times worse?
Right.
Not 100,000 times worse. Not 50 times worse. 1,000,000. 1,000,000. I'm in a good mood. I've been in a good mood. This has just been fermenting in me for days now. Because I sent out that mass email a while ago. By the time you have a picture that goes online into people's daily of a molten salt loop of an experiment, think of all those concentric circles of decision making and expertise and engineering that has gone into it.
Right.
So the other half of this, so I'll get right.
The way is paved.
Yeah.
You've done a lot.
It has inertia.
Right. You've done a lot of the initial energy cost in the vague sort of spiritual sense
Yeah.
to be able to. Well, it's like it's like playing a certain type of board game or card game.
Yeah.
Where like you spend a long time building the machine, but once it's well built, then it runs really well.
Yeah. But Machiavelli said, like, there is no plan more likely to be successful than one that has been hidden from the enemy until the time of its execution. Mm-hmm. For the fossil fuel industry, this is like being a city in Central Asia in the 1200s. And you wake up one morning and there's this big army around you led by Genghis Khan. And you go,
where'd that come from?
What do you mean you're 1,000,000 times more potent than we are? Yeah.
And why didn't I know you were going to show up?
Yeah. Samarkand, Urgench, Merv, like, I advise you to surrender. You're not in a position at this point to send out spies or emissaries to try to break up what this guy Temujin is doing. You're a bit behind the 8 ball. You're way behind the 8 ball. The army is here now, and they are incorporating you into their empire, and you have no freedom of action. You are in no position to do anything about what they are going to do. Oh.
I mean, do you suppose they know it yet?
Some of them didn't surrender, and I'm like, do you have no understanding of how hard it is to organize human beings? You could never put an army together like that. You don't even try. And when that superb army that is a century ahead of all other armies on the planet shows up, you go, well, we're going to do what we always did.
I worked for my pappy.
Yeah, and it's like you're not even resting.
It's worked for us so far.
You're not even resting on your laurels. You don't have any laurels. You're just like a dumb animal. Like, this is how I've always done things. Oh my God. In 20 years, China will not need to import oil except as chemical feedstock. And if somebody tries to cut it, they'll be like, well, fuck you then. We'll make our own chemical feedstock with our coal reserves. You know, because coal can be under high heat. If the heat is free, you can just basically kind of turn coal into oil, more or less. That happens in a few parts of the world. They will not need to import natural gas from Russia. Because right now they use it pretty much to balance their electric grid. And if you have molten salt reactors, you don't need natural gas. This isn't about wind and solar. This is about not needing fossil fuels. The wind blows and then it stops. The coal is 100 million years old. It doesn't start and stop. It's just a lump of energy if you expose it to oxygen.
I mean, I was
the
thinking,
oil is, yeah.
I was thinking earlier, even though the Industrial Revolution or whatever was the dawning of a new era.
Yeah.
It wasn't intrinsically, sort of essentially, shifting from one thing to another because it was going from chemical bonds to chemical bonds.
Yes.
Right. So even that revolution was maybe not as transformative as literally, although we, I guess that's silly to say, but because we've been doing it for a while. I mean, we have to a certain extent transitioned from, burning,
right.
BTUs of chemical bonds,
right,
to leveraging some of the energy stored in nuclear bonds.
Yeah.
Nuclear power isn't new, although it's relatively new. But actually transitioning entirely is literally, I mean, I'm just
you're
clumsily reiterating what you're saying is that it's
Yeah.
transitioning from fossil fuels, aka chemical energy, to nuclear energy.
Yeah. You're going from electron exchange to strong nuclear force exchange. Yeah. Yeah.
So that
God
seems
damn.
like a significant difference to me.
Yeah, it's 1,000,000 times more significant. Yeah. Yeah, because
Until we learn how to leverage,
the next highest one is fusion. And
or
after that is
like splitting an electron into its constituent parts. Oh wait, it doesn't have constituent parts.
So it goes fission, fusion, and the next highest energetic interaction is matter antimatter.
Matter antimatter. That's right. Yeah. When a particle encounters an antiparticle or whatever.
as if you could go and gather antimatter. Like, oh yeah, there's antimatter in them there hills. You can tell because it's annihilating everything. Whoops. Like the next. After that,
there's got to be another threat.
That is the next, and after that, it's probably black holes. Like what the fuck? You're splitting apart a nucleus. A fucking nucleus.
There's only a few more turtles to go.
Yeah, you're at your third to last turtle. Oh, this is our time engine.
Yeah, exactly.
It's it's just
we're gonna sound naive in 200 years, but
yeah,
when they start,
we are.
But
this will be dredged up and dusted off. Oh. These
they laughed about a time engine.
Right. Yeah, well,
we're all and they power all of our automobiles.
Right. Which are tachyons. They're just tourists of the past. In which case, hello. But you look just like a Central Asian city looking at a Mongol empire and a Mongol army and not getting it, and being really swept into the dust heap of history, either at that moment or you're folded into this new era. We look at cities like Nanjing or Hangzhou or Shenzhen and what they look like at night, those incredible light displays, and what is happening, this higher level of human organization in a weird way, not the weaponization. It's only because a weapon can be picked up by anybody, but it's gonna really suck if we keep antagonizing China. We might find it's like the markets disappear for us almost overnight. Xi Jinping raises his little finger and suddenly nobody buys American in China. No, not corn, not soy, not nothing. And then it really rots in the fields. And we go, they just have to say the word. The number of levers they have is immense. I don't even mean tariffs. I don't even mean actually doing anything. Just making it clear that patriotic Chinese don't buy any American products anymore. And they have to be clearly labeled.
Really?
They could. They could say that in the news. Literally in the news.
And
just
think that.
I don't know. I don't think they will, unless.
Well, no. I just don't know. Well, I don't even know what nationalism is like here, but I don't really have any insight into nationalism there. Would that be effective? The sort of soft implication that to be
a soft implication,
patriotic citizen of the Chinese state, you will not buy whateevers anymore. Fords.
all our widgets.
Or I guess maybe you're thinking more like.
Just I would think so.
Not on a consumer scale, but on a we're not buying anymore.
Yeah.
Corn.
I think so. I think that's a possibility of not even official tariffs, just subtle hints that we're not doing this anymore.
Interesting.
because, Argentina and Russia grow enough soy and corn. So what do we need?
And beef. Well,
Yeah.
in Argentina anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, right?
I
Don't
think
they
so.
have the
Yeah.
good beef?
Yeah. But we look at those cities and we look at what they've done and like the dynamics in place, and we, instead of rethinking anything at all, just interpret it through the exact same lens of like the Cold War. And the we is not every American, but it's the zeitgeist. It's our
large,
news, industrial complex. And then this thing, the molten salt reactor, starts happening, and it'll have its pitfalls. There will be mistakes made, but at least they're making mistakes. We aren't even wrong. Right? That's what, Wolfgang Pauli, it's far more devastating to not even be wrong. Pauli said that, the Pauli exclusion principle. Like, you're not even approaching the problem. You're not even talking about the problem. This is carbon-free energy that is so abundant that it puts mass-scale carbon sequestration within your grasp. You can affordably do it. It puts the complete decarbonization of your entire industrial ecosystem within reach. You can now make steel and paper and paint and plastic and aluminum and electronics and lumber, and now I'm just looking around the room, linoleum and glass,
Tupperware and skyscrapers and refrigerators,
and televisions and refrigerators and pizza paddles. Oh, ceramics. There's ceramics.
This is the portion of this is the segment of the show where Adam looks around the room and names
I see
things
with my little eye. Textiles, and I think I said ink already. Toothpaste, lighter fluid, and shoes, slippers. Without destroying the carbon balance of your atmosphere, which is important. It puts mass-scale desalinization of seawater within your grasp in an economic way. Like, you can actually you can build one of these fuckers.
You don't even have to sacrifice. You don't even have to put on sackcloth to do, or tighten your belt to do it.
No, it's literally the exact opposite. Like, Jordan, the country, is drying the fuck out. Libya needs fresh water. Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, they need more water. There's too many people there. They vastly exceed the ecological carrying capacity of that arid environment. Greece is burning up.
California.
Yeah. Yes. You can park one of these next to the ocean, use it to make electricity, and then the residual, it's so hot on the way out that you can build a desal plant on the tail end. You don't even have to have it devoted to desalination unless you need to. Right? The exhaust is hot enough to run a desalination plant. But, it puts that within your reach.
Kind of cute that your salt plant can power a desalt plant.
Right. And then you get more sodium chloride, when you make it. You get the brine.
Pretty good.
Fertilizer.
Put a pickle plant next to
it. Fertilizer uses like 5% of the natural gas in the world.
Wow.
Yeah. And like 5% of the energy, because it takes a hell of a lot of energy to convert atmospheric nitrogen to ammonia and then into ammonium nitrate. It's a very energetic process. But hey, cool. we now have 1 million times more energy available to us. There's already, using the energy of fossil fuels during the madness, the sheer insanity of the Cold War. How nice that the acronym is MAD. That was the best you could do. That's Western civilization, mutually assured destruction. That's what you came up with? And I'm like, just fucking do it. Just make it D. I mean, if you really do believe in an afterlife, if you really do, just do commit mass suicide. Why not? Then what are you so afraid of? Thanks to the madness of the Cold War, above ground, it's already above ground. It was dug up and enriched, and one part was enriched, the U-235, the other part was depleted, the U-238. We have 1,600,000 tons, not pounds, tons of uranium-238 above the ground. We know where it is. It's already dug up and relatively purified. Those can be used in molten salt reactors. Not exactly the one that China's building at the moment, I don't think, but they have a program in place.
Right. Not to mention all of the nuclear waste, spent
nuclear fuel. Yes.
Yeah. That's was above the ground, but then put back in the ground.
Yeah. Yes. The other infuriating aspect is, after using a colossal amount of energy and emitting a lot of carbon dioxide to make that energy, to enrich uranium, you now have a uranium solid fuel pellet, and you use about 4% of the energy available in it. And then it's too damaged to be used in a solid fuel reactor because the fuel is solid. And then you have to stick it in the ground and look at it and contemplate your own foolishness, contemplate your own short-sightedness, and say, oh, okay, this will be radioactive, dangerously so, like you can't be near it for, just a mere 100,000 years. How can you even respect people who do that? I'm going to leave this. This is my legacy. I don't have to respect you. I don't have to worry about your worldview or what you think about what I think of you. That is not there's no reciprocity there. Thanks, Cold Warriors. Thanks. You left me a planet in fucking ruins. I don't have to give a fuck about what you think. I don't have to care. Not only you're dying out, but even if you had a pill that lived forever, what is your legacy? Distrust with Russia, an ancient, powerful civilization? Distrust with China? What's your legacy?
And death, just holes full of death.
Here you go, kids. Then why have children? Win the Cold War. Fucking do it. Push that button. See what the mutually assured destruction would be, because they don't want it. China and Russia don't want mutually assured destruction. They're building a brighter future than we are capable, it seems, of imagining. Oh, that got pretty real.
Well, you've always got to.
Yeah, sorry. It's the nicotine.
Oh,
it's just the nicotine talking.
You snuck one while I wasn't looking.
No, it's just the two snooze packets. Yeah, but I mean, the this is like, gaze upon my works, ye mighty, in despair. What works are those? Right? Because your legacy is poison for far longer than the pyramids in Egypt. And you didn't have a plan, as far as I can tell. And we do not this is the other direction I wanted to go. And we do not have a molten salt reactor program. So I've been following these guys. I'm pretty much repeating myself. I've been following these guys since like 2013, Thorium Energy Action Alliance, Thorium Energy Action Conference. They have them every year. Shout out Kirk Sorensen, John Kutch, Jim Kennedy, Ed File, others, Ron Jorgensen. They, you can't even say an end run because they weren't going in any direction. It was advocacy, right? And the Chinese government started a program in 2011 just when they were really getting going. So all these Westerners have been building up support and all this other crap, and none of it matters anymore.
Whistle stop tours, and
yeah, they talk, they go to conferences,
the circuit,
and they talk, and they design on computers.
I mean, I imagine large part well-meaning, well-intentioned.
It's as good as it gets. I mean, yeah, it's the best intentions you could have for the only system that's going to actually rescue the industrial economy from, ecocide.
But not fertile ground. I mean, it's the.
I see no seed. I have no seed.
Yeah,
the seeds are scattered, but there's no green
on the path, or the trampled under hooves or something.
Yeah, like they talk and they talk. And they make videos, and they talk to senators, and they talk to representatives, and they talk to the NRC, Regulatory Commission. At the end of the
day, they're just like that lady on the corner.
Ouch.
That's not fair.
No, well, but like, what are they, there are Chinese grad students now who are who young enough to be their children. I've been watching them get older and fatter and more angry and more frustrated. Those aren't good things. In 2014, they almost had a bill get through that would have, started rare earth element mining, and and it failed, and it was the Department of Defense that caused it to fail. If they were sitting in the room, I don't know exactly what I would tell them, because even if they went, let's say they were a group and they went as supplicants to the government of China, that program that exists now and is about to start running and testing, what would China say? We don't need you.
Right. What's the utility of advocates in the...
It's going.
Yeah. You're some worse version of preaching to the choir over here and over there.
Yeah. They should probably, I would say, do a fast spectrum molten sodium chloride breeder reactor, Ed File's design. That's what I would advise the Chinese government. Like, thorium is much more abundant, but it does better in a fast spectrum than a thermal spectrum. I don't know what the spectrum is that they're using. The most important threshold is that you do a molten salt. The next most important one is thermal versus slow versus fast neutrons. Thermal means slow. But they would probably say, yeah, we're looking into that too.
Yeah,
of course they would be.
We're on it.
We're on it, bro. Yeah. We got this.
We have the internet, and
we watch Ed File videos too.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, we've got translators. Fuck. You think they ripped our industrial guts out with rare earth elements and just being cheaper? Now their electricity is going to be free in a couple of decades. Damn. Good on them. A Bronze Age civilization survived. The Shuangnu, the Turks, the Mongols.
The Bulgars, the Lombards.
No. Europeans and the Japanese, their roots go back that fucking deep. And now they're a neutron civilization, a neutron economy. It is utterly mind-blowing. I can't wrap my head around it. It is as if ancient Egypt built a molten salt reactor next to the pyramids, and it's like both of those are Egyptian. Chinese architecture has an continuity that is over 3,000 years old. It is a straight fucking line. There is no break. There's no dark age where it's like, oh yeah, like unlike the Western Mediterranean, where it's like, yeah, Frankish architecture is not the same as Roman. Theirs is the same. Oh my God, it is unbelievable. They talk about new Silk Roads. I'm like, it's the same Silk Road. What do you mean new? It's the same one. The one that Han Wudi put in. Now it's railroads powered with liquid fuels and electricity made by molten salt. Jesus Christ. It's unbelievable. I'm just, yeah, the past few weeks, I'm just like, whoa. There's not even a...
This is stunning.
Yeah, it would be like... See, when Britain went industrial, they had no antecedents. And so the changes were happening and there was no lens. The lens was being built as it happened, and so it's like, well. But this transformation does have the antecedent of a previous industrial revolution. It's another click on the ratchet, but it's the same ratchet. This is hyper-industrialization. Industrialization powered by an energy source 1,000,000 times more dense. So we have a lens already. And so it'd be like that conversation with the Frenchman in 1830, but knowing what industrialization would mean. Like the horse and buggy is going away. Horses will not be your main form of transportation. They would be like, what are you talking about?
I was sort of...
Horses have been the fastest form of transportation since their domestication 6,000 years ago. What do you mean in less than 100 years they will be anachronistic? They'll be obsolete. So yeah, damn. That's the difference. I feel like I have a sense of what the changes are coming.
Although it's in a way transformative, I mean, the way you were just sort of characterizing it, it's industrialization 2.0. That's sort of silly. Yeah. But you could almost say, like in a very simplistic way, the shape of the machine, the shape of the algorithm, the shape of the equation looks the same. You just get to put 1,000,000 in one of your variables where you used to put one.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But in a good way, in the best way,
yeah.
right?
In the best
You're saying
way,
this is industrial. I mean, it's industrialization.
Fair enough. Like the next layer of an onion, except it's 1,000,000 times thicker, right? Yeah.
Right.
I'm not. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
I mean, that's not entirely true because it is
Yeah,
the world.
That's fair.
Is different, but as far as and I don't even know what I mean when I say industrialization.
The symmetry of it.
If it just.
Yeah. That's fair. I clearly don't believe in the supernatural, and this wouldn't be. It's not like it's not going to look like Dune. They're not going to have faster than light travel, shit like that.
Right.
So.
Right.
That's fair.
But keep.
Yeah.
Melting steel and making ceramics.
Yeah.
Making glass.
Yeah.
We just get to do it 1,000,000 times cheaper in a way, and we also have the excess enough to build desalination machines and
so
carbon grabbing, sequestering machines and
I think what would happen is the cost of consumer goods would get progressively cheaper and cheaper the faster you started rolling these out. So once they really start rolling out quickly, the energy cost to industrial processes like melting steel, starting with the really primary stuff, mining, starts decreasing rapidly. And so I believe that the cost of goods on the shelf for the consumer, those savings would be passed on because businesses would have to start competing over other things rather than like, oh, the cost of energy. Cost of energy drops to zero. It would cause, I believe, an expansion in consumption, unfortunately, of human consumption. But I believe it would be also the relatively rapid expansion of standards of living.
Yeah, I mean,
like wealth.
If all of that is true, it sounds like a kinder world, right? I mean, by any measure, so long as that in the imagined time when there are enough.
Yeah. And also I think interestingly enough, if you hold a piece of steel, it's a material and the energy that went into the creation of that material, right? It is not ore. It is not a piece of rock. A lot of energy had to go into refining it, a tremendous amount. Or a chemical, acetone. You hold a vial of acetone. It's just carbon and oxygen and hydrogen. I see that all over the place. I breathe it in. Yeah, but to turn it into acetone, you have to put a lot of energy into it. So if the energy side of things, the bottom drops out. Like, so what? There's a million tons of U2 depleted uranium above the ground. Like, just throw more in a molten salt reactor and use it to make your materials. The energy part of the equation drops out, so the material part becomes what's really valuable. I think that would lead to an increase in recycling, actually, because recycling takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of labor to sort. Sorting takes a lot of labor. Getting the fucking label off of your plastic bottle or the lid, with two things that are separate. But if you're in an economy where the energy doesn't matter, because it's free, the value of the material goes up. So I would hope, especially presumably with government incentive, the value of trash would go up. Because, unfortunately, like my experience at the water bottle factory, raw plastic is still cheaper than recycled.
Right.
So they try to push recycling, but at the end of the day, it's cheaper to get pellets of raw plastic out of the ground from oil.
But without that energy cost being a limiting factor, all of a sudden you might want some trash to turn into something.
Yeah. And because, if it's like, well, we could recycle concrete, but we need to suck up a huge amount of electricity generation to do that. It's very prohibitive on the energy cost side of things. Well, if it isn't anymore, you have all this concrete laying around, so maybe you don't have to kill your rivers by sucking up sand, Maybe you could take raw rock and grind it into sand that's useful in cement instead of having to do the cheap stuff because it's laying there as a sedimentary, system. Like the Chinese industrialization has basically killed the Mekong River because it's cheap to mine sand. There's a documentary out there called Sand Wars, and they've killed it. They killed that fucking river, that beautiful, incredible megafauna, fish megafauna, gone. I mean, they've ruined it. Well, if you have this molten salt reactor to keep it going for 7 centuries would be a block of thorium the size of this room. It's sitting in the corner, and you trickle in a little, sand of it, in principle. Well, then maybe you could run a factory and a ginormous machine that just grinds some, granite into sand, and then you don't have to kill your rivers.
Right.
People are not
the
inherently
ability to not sort of get the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah.
If doing so is going to.
Yeah.
This analogy is probably bad because I don't think that kills your tree. But pretend grabbing the lowest hanging fruit kills your tree.
Right.
You don't have to do that anymore.
Well, I mean, what is there any sentence more poignant in the human experience than I did what I had to do to survive? Part of the reason refugee crises are getting worse, and part of the reason the geopolitical situation is getting worse, is because we are getting squeezed by peak oil. Okay? It's 1 hour, 15 minutes. Since the beginning of this talk, about 4 million barrels of oil have been burned. We are not discovering it at that rate. So, and every barrel you produce, the next one is a little bit more expensive. There's a little bit less. It's asphyxiation. This is economic asphyxiation. The squeeze is already on. The coal is deeper than it's ever been. The oil.
I guess if you start at the top, it only gets deeper. Or if you're picking a tree, if you start at the bottom, it only gets higher.
That's exactly right. That's that essay I'm writing now. And like, if it gets progressively more difficult energetically to harvest your very energy source itself, at the beginning, it catalyzes its own production. But on the second half of that slope, it works against its own production. So even if, and this popped out at me while writing it, and I kind of went, oh, fuck, I didn't even realize this. Even if the energy source is technically infinite, like solar, which is not technically infinite, nothing is. But even if, for the sake of argument, let's say it's technically infinite, but it gets progressively more difficult to develop, to harvest.
There will be a theoretical threshold.
There's a theoretical limit.
Equal, you spend as much to get that much.
Yep. Like a star finding iron in its fusion. After that, it costs more energetically. So the energy either has to
put stuff together, right?
Yep.
Or, if you're digging a hole.
If you're digging a hole and it's 1 foot deeper, and then it's 2 feet deeper,
right?
Then it's 3 feet deeper. At a certain,
even if it was infinitely deep.
Even if it's infinitely deep, there is an infinite amount of oil in the world. Cool, good for you. But if even at the most infinitesimally small amount, if there's a limit, if it gets harder and harder, there is a theoretical limit where there's no reason to develop it after that point because it costs more to harvest than what you get
to run your bucket up and down, to run your dumbwaiter.
Yeah, that's the other reason why this is the end of the fossil fuel age. For that reason, peak oil, peak coal, peak natural gas. They don't develop the hardest to reach stuff first. You always pick the lowest hanging fruit first. It has the greatest return on the investment, but you will never have that low hanging fruit again. You can only pick it once. The next one, your arm has to reach a little bit higher, and then a little bit higher, and then you reach the end of your arm. And after that, you have to jump, and that takes energy. And then you reach the end of your ability to jump because it takes energy to jump. So, I mean, in the long run, even this nuclear fuel will eventually reach its limit. It will. I'm not saying it's infinite. As long as the Earth exists, though, there will be enough thorium and uranium in the ground.
That's pretty good.
I'm fine with that. I don't actually want to live literally forever. I know I was baptized once, but I'll pass on that. If I die and they're like, oh yeah, that baptism, you have to live forever. I'd be like, can I please?
Is that an opting out?
Yeah, can I opt out? I mean, 4 million years is kind of cool, but I just want to see what my original universe is doing. So yeah, as long as there are rocks, there is enough radioactive nuclides, either fissile or fertile, in the ground to power human civilization at some level. you can take a cubic meter of granite, even just basic granite, and there's probably about a cubic centimeter of thorium in it. And if you throw that,
that's not bad.
No, it ain't. That's mineable, and that is background granite. That is not thorium ore. That is granite, just granite.
That's not bad.
Yeah, you can get the thorium out of there, or the uranium, and you can throw it in a molten salt reactor. And I mean, 1 cubic centimeter is like your first 25 years of all your energy consumption at this level.
Well, and I think we touched on this on the first one or the second one, but I found it interesting enough. I'm bringing it up again. Like this, you made the claim we made sort of more radioactive pollution burning coal.
That is true. Yeah.
With its impurities, trace impurities of actual radioactive nuclei.
Yeah.
Literally throwing it in a furnace somewhere. Coal.
Yeah. To be actually burned by oxygen, not, yeah. Yep.
Done more boogeyman nuclear poison.
Because we expel it to the atmosphere. Those nuclides, get caught up in the ash and out there. And the other ones are left in coal ash, which is catastrophically abundant. Oh boy. There's a lot of coal ash. Don't look it up. It's really distressing. Okay. When those things fail, they kill entire villages and rivers.
Eesh.
They're lakes of this disgusting mud sludge. Because coal is a real thing and there's ash. It doesn't disappear. Nothing disappears. Nothing ever ends. Everything's connected. Your choices matter. Your civilizational choices matter. You would be better. They're going to extract the thorium out of coal ash.
Right.
Using the energy from molten salt reactors. And it'll be a positive return on investment.
Right.
And then you'll deal with the coal ash. You'll have to vitrify it. You'd have to cook it to like glass because it's terrible stuff. It's so fucking bad. It's really nasty. And like, the largest coal plant in England for electricity generation uses 9,000 tons of coal a day. Okay. So and humans are real clever. We're like the orcs of Mordor, we're not like the elves. Christ. So this really fancy, very efficient system, it's like fucking Auschwitz. Auschwitz was efficient. At what? I don't care if you're efficient. You have to be efficient at something. That's where the moral equation comes in. The trains come in and they never technically stop because that takes stopping and starting a train sucks, like that's hard. That's really hard on the system. So they slow down and they drop the coal into these systems and it goes down onto conveyor belts, which are very efficient, and it pulls them up and it pulverizes them into dust because that's more efficient at generating heat. And it, gets mixed with high temperature oxygen and goes up and it makes all this marvelous heat, and there's a heat exchanger and it makes steam and it turns a turbine and that makes a voltage. 9,000 tons of coal makes 9,000 tons of coal ash every 24 hours. And that is 9,000 tons every 24 hours. Has to go somewhere. We don't like to talk about this. This gets swept under the rug. There are just these vast lakes of this hideous, horrible poison. It's not just radioactive. It's not any more radioactive than it was before, but it's nastier. It's toxic for other reasons too. And that's your legacy, That's what you did. Why were you good at doing that? Why didn't you do this other thing?
Get good at something good.
9,000 tons of thorium is a quantity you can actually consider, because it's so dense. We could easily mine that a year. But if you have to refuel a molten salt reactor takes 3 kilograms a day. So, let's say 1 metric ton is what? How many thousand kilograms? Is that 1,000 kilograms? Is that a ton?
I don't remember.
I don't even know. But like, think about this. Like, you know, like 9,000 tons is several hundred years of a molten salt reactor. So you already move material in 24 hours that could fuel a molten salt reactor for 500 years.
And you're doing it just for another day.
Yeah. You're doing it for 24 hours. Stack, Jesus, 9,000 tons. So like Ed File was saying, like for his reactor, they need like 37 tons to fire it up. And then you feed in a little bit every day, like 3 kilograms. What's 9,000 divided by 37? What's 9,000 divided by 37? I mean, it's just ludicrous. Like we can do this, but we're not. At this point, it feels like a choice, not whoopsie.
But the big we is doing it.
The big we is doing it. The Middle Kingdom.
The Wu Wei we.
Yeah, in the city of Wu Wei. They're starting. They've begun. They're 10 years ahead of us. My condolences to Jim Kennedy and John Kutch and Kirk Sorensen. Sorry, bro. I hope your picture goes on a wall somewhere someday.